Hello and welcome to Sunday Politics. The First and Deputy First Ministers had a busy first week in office. Emma Little-Pengelly joins me for her first studio interview since taking up her new job. Tackling childcare costs is a priority, say ministers. We'll ask what needs to be done and how quickly. And Suzanne Breen is here to cast an eye over what was, by any standards, a very busy week in local politics. Well, let's turn straight to the Deputy First Minister, Emma Little-Pengelly. Welcome to Sunday Politics and congratulations on the new job. You were appointed Deputy First Minister last Saturday, but if we're splitting hairs, should we really be introducing you as interim Deputy First Minister while your party leader decides if he's going to come back to do the job himself?
Well, look, it's an absolute honour to be asked to step up and to serve Northern Ireland in this way. It is something that I will be doing with absolute dedication. There are big challenges facing Northern Ireland and I am determined to do everything that I can, working with colleagues, working across parties to drive through that delivery that I think is demanded and expected of us by the public. My party leader, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, has already referenced this issue. He was asked that question. He made very clear that I have been appointed, I've been asked to do this role as Deputy First Minister, and it's as simple as that. Yeah.
How long do you think you'll be doing the job for? Because Geoffrey Donaldson did say in May 2022 at the last election very clearly it was his intention to win an Assembly seat in Lagan Valley and leave Westminster. And he clearly hasn't done that, but he hasn't ruled out doing it in future.
Look, all I can say is that I have been asked to do this role. I am approaching this role in the sense that, look, we have got a programme of work, a significant programme of work to do. I am determined to use whatever time that there is. We've got 3 years left of this mandate. That is what I am planning for in terms of driving through and supporting that change and delivery that we need to see.
OK. Are you at all embarrassed by the fact that you do not have a mandate for the job?
Look, I can't change the circumstances of my position, but as I indicated previously and earlier on this week, look, regardless of the circumstances, I think what people in Northern Ireland want to see is us looking to the future, looking together, working together, tackling those big issues. That is what the public want us to be focused on in terms of the literally hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of messages I have received. That is the core message. It is not an issue about any of these particular points. It is saying to me, we want you to try your best, to work hard, to make Northern Ireland work, to make the executive work, and it's absolutely critical to get that delivery, to challenge all of those big issues happening within our public services and improve those for everyone in Northern Ireland.
The problem surely is that your colleague in the Executive Office, Michelle O'Neill, has a thumping mandate to do the job of First Minister. You don't have a mandate, and you will know that people have raised this issue, some of them very senior people. I was looking at my Twitter feed before I came in and people were saying, make sure you ask about a lack of democratic mandate.
Well, I don't need to be the person to tell you that you shouldn't always listen to Twitter. But
I'm not. But it is an issue. That's the point. It is an issue for some people.
I have no doubt that, of course, it is. But look, those are the circumstances. Those are circumstances that I can't change. But what I can do is give the commitment about working forward. Look, it isn't, of course, unprecedented. We have had ministers in the executive before that have been co-opted. Those are the rules that we have.
Not at this level.
But look, that is the rules that we have. It is within those rules. And look, I can't change those circumstances. Okay. But as I've said, I can give the absolute commitment to do my best. I consider it a huge honour and a privilege to be asked to step up and to do this role. And I will do it with the best of my abilities.
OK, how stable do you think this fledgling executive is in the medium to long term? When your own party is so clearly divided on the way forward, you will know yesterday 3 senior DUP figures, Sammy Wilson and Lords Dodds and Morrow, wrote a piece in the newsletter saying, despite reassurances from Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, the Irish sea border remains in place and the DUP's 7 tests have not been met.
Look, people will come to their own conclusions and their own views. But look, it's as simple as this. The party executive, the DUP party executive, a significant body has made a decision. And that decision was based on the very, very detailed presentation of all of these matters that took place over a significant number of hours. That decision has been made. And that was made on the basis that Sir Geoffrey Donaldson achieved a significant number of things in relation to this proposal and this deal. And that included protecting and ensuring unfettered internal UK.
Sure, but is Nigel Dodds just howling into the night at this point? Is that what you're saying? Nobody's listening. Over and done with. The executive is there, we carry on.
Like, as I've said, people will have different views and opinions, but the party executive made their decision. And that decision was to move forward and to get back into the executive, get back into government and try to deliver. And that was on the basis of a good and fair deal that Sir Geoffrey Donaldson has achieved. Okay. Geoffrey has been very clear. Did he achieve everything that he sought out to achieve? No, but no negotiation is ever perfect, and there is more yet to do. But what he has achieved is significant. It is significantly more than most people thought that he could have achieved. And absolutely critical to that is that he has achieved that unfettered free flow of trade internal to this United Kingdom, and he has removed the barriers to that, and that was an absolutely key issue for people.
Okay, so it sounds like you're not even saying the 7 tests have been met and that the Irish sea border has gone, which is interesting.
I can't get into the whole detail of that.
No, I don't want to get into the whole detail of it, but it is interesting, your use of language. I'm sure people will have
I can go through all of those 7 tests, and I can point you to where we have significant change.
Oh, significant change. Significant change is not the same as delivering the 7 tests.
Absolutely significant and positive change against all of those 7 tests. And Sir Geoffrey, of course, has done significant media on this and went through that in great detail. But of course, I know that you don't want me to go into all of that.
Well, we haven't got time to go into all of it. And the point is, you haven't persuaded people like Lords Dodds, Morrow and Sammy Wilson. I want to ask you about your partner in government, Michelle O'Neill. And she is your partner in government. She made a very public commitment when she took up the job of First Minister to reach out to all communities during her term in office. And we saw that. An example of that on Friday when she attended a PSNI graduation in Belfast. Now, as Deputy First Minister, what plans do you have to demonstrate a similar commitment?
Look, in everything that I do, I will make clear that I am here to work for and to serve every person in Northern Ireland, regardless of background, regardless of view. I will be working. And look, tackling the big issues of health and education, tackling the big issues of childcare, that is something that benefits families, no matter what their view is on the constitutional question, no matter what their community background or what their faith is. Yeah. And that is what I will be doing.
But what, to judge you, I suppose, to judge those words, we need to actually see action. So are we going to see you at a GAA game? Are you going to go to a camogie match? How are you going to stretch yourself?
Well, look, in my life, I'm somebody who's always worked with people and for people right across the community. When you said to me about doing something that will stretch me, well, I don't think that there's anything for me that is off the table in terms of the things that I have done in the past. In relation to the constituencies I have represented, I have supported sporting clubs from across all communities, including in terms of the GAA. So, look, I will be looking at all invitations that come in. I'm absolutely clear. I will be getting out there and supporting every single person in Northern Ireland, regardless of their background.
Well, that takes us into very interesting territory. That by your own logic, you should be able to say today that the redevelopment of Casement Park has your full support, does it?
Well, look, Casement Park was part of the package in terms of the Windsor Park and what was then Ravenhill in relation to the rugby. That commitment stands. The DUP has never been in a position where we've said that Casement should not go ahead. It didn't go ahead at the same time because of other issues, including some planning issues, and that remains the position. Yeah,
but some in your party have made it clear that they are opposed to any additional executive funds going towards the redevelopment. Are you going to make sure, as a senior figure in the Government of Northern Ireland, that whatever needs to be done to make sure that Casement is delivered in time for the 2028 Euros will be done? And if that means additional money from Northern Ireland, that will be forthcoming.
The funding package that was agreed on the basis of a fair and equitable distribution.
Well, we know prices have gone up since then.
But that has recognised how many people play the sports, how many people are spectators in those sports. So look, there is an allocation that has been made, but there has to be a collaborative approach in terms of what can be reasonable and what can be done. The GAA in Casement Park, there is an allocation there. I understand that costs have increased, but those costs are not just inflation costs. Those costs are significant in terms of the plans and the proposals. At the moment, there is an allocation. Everybody is aware of how difficult the fiscal position is for the executive, but in terms of the principle of it as part of that package, but any additional resource allocated moving forward, of course, must be done in the same fair and equitable basis, recognising that many people across Northern Ireland are hugely invested and play a huge range of different sports as well.
Yes, of course, but this is what we're talking about at the moment, because those other redevelopments that you referred to in terms of football and rugby have already taken place. Can you say today, on the record in this interview, that you want to see Casement redeveloped, ready for business, open by 2028?
Well, Mark, as I've indicated, the commitment to the Casement project is there as part of the original allocation. That was based on a fair and reasonable allocation
It's
across
going to take more
those
money.
three.
You know it's going to take more money.
And look, that of course will be discussed, and we wait for the communities ministers and others to bring forward their proposals in relation to that. I can't prejudge that, and in fact it would be entirely wrong for me to be prejudging anything in terms of the allocation of public money. There is a process for that. There will be a discussion on that. But in all of the distribution of public money, it has to be done in a fair and equitable basis.
And that brings us to revenue raising, really, in a way, doesn't it? Because one of the biggest challenges the executive faces is dealing with those financial challenges that you've already been talking about across all departments. What revenue raising measures do you support as Deputy First Minister, and which are DUP red lines which will you not consider?
Look, my concern about this, and this of course was something that had been, whether you say threatened or proposed by the Secretary of State in the last number of months and over perhaps longer than that. But look, this is my concern. In Northern Ireland, we have a huge number of really pressed families, really squeezed families in terms of their income. In Northern Ireland, we've got a different profile in terms of household income. And I think we will very shortly hear that, because many of those families are the very same families who are trying to bring up children, stay in work, get childcare. We know how much financial pressure those families are under. And I actually think a number of these proposals will do nothing but actually put additional pressure on those hard-pressed families at a time of a cost of living crisis, at a time where inflation is incredibly high, at a time where childcare costs are really, really difficult for them. So we have to be really careful. In addition, look, we've got public services issues. The quality of our public service is not up to scratch. And asking people right now to pay more for poor public services, I don't think is a sustainable position. OK, so Conor Murphy, the Economy Minister, has already ruled out raising tuition fees. He says he doesn't support that. Are you saying you don't support the regional rate going up, for example, by 15%? You don't support the introduction of water charges? Just very briefly, is that your position? As I understand it, all of these issues will be discussed, but I will place these firmly in the context of and I've outlined exactly why I have serious concerns. We are in a financially pressured situation for families throughout Northern Ireland. Instead of actually asking them to pay more, we need to be looking at additional support, such as childcare, to support those families, because we know they're under massive pressure. All right, give me a one-sentence answer to this. Do you like Michelle O'Neill? Can you do business with her? Are you going to build a positive relationship with her? I am determined to build a positive relationship, not just with Michelle O'Neill, but with all of my colleagues around that table, because that's what we need to do in order to move forward. And we have to work constructively. Of course, we can't predict what's going to happen. Things will emerge. There will be challenges, I've no doubt. But I think that firm commitment at this stage is what every member around that executive table should do. And I certainly will bring my absolute commitment to that. OK, need to leave it there. Thank you for joining us. We'll speak to you again briefly at the end of the programme. But let's hear the thoughts of Suzanne Breen on what we've been discussing. Welcome to you, Suzanne. What stood out for you in that 12-minute conversation?
Well, I think it's quite clear that Emma realises the pressure she is under as the first unelected Deputy First Minister. She has argued, and the DUP will argue, that that is the rules, but obviously there's a significant body of opinion out there that says just because rules exist doesn't mean that parties have to take advantage of them. Deirdre Hargey was co-opted into the South Belfast seat by Sinn Féin in place of Martina Muller. A few days later, she became Communities Minister. But the argument will be that, well, she was a minister, but she wasn't one of those leading the executive. I think there is a lot of pressure on Emma to prove people wrong, both people within her party who might be critical, but generally across the political spectrum. And she has the perfect opportunity now on a big stage to show that she can cut the mustard. She will face voters eventually, be it in an Assembly election in 3 years' time, or if she does actually become the DUP's Westminster candidate this year, instead of Jeffrey Donaldson, she could face voters then.
And I suppose the DUP will say, presumably, that the reason she's been put into that job in what might be seen as an unconventional way is because the party believes she's the best person to do that job.
Well, Jeffrey Donaldson isn't the only DUP leader who has believed that Emma is extremely capable. She was promoted by Peter Robinson. Arlene Foster thought very highly of her. And I think it has to be said that there were prominent men in the DUP who didn't want this job despite its very handsome salary. They thought that it was a poison chalice. Somebody said to me, whoever takes it is on a hiding to nothing. It's tricky territory for the DUP, being second to Sinn Féin.
And in a sentence, that was not, the end of that conversation, was certainly not a manifesto for revenue raising.
No, I don't think there is going to be revenue raising, and I think the government will give the executive more funding without the strings of revenue raising attached. OK, and indeed you were predicting that could be as much as £700 million, which would bring that package up to £4 billion. Thank you, Suzanne. We'll touch you again a little bit later in the programme. Let's turn our attention next to the issue of childcare costs. It's something both the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister raised in their speeches last week. Let's discuss some of the challenges involved with Aoife Hamilton from Employers for Childcare, the Alliance Party's Kate Nicholl, who sits on the Education Committee, and Sinn Féin's Liz Kimmins, who chairs Stormont's Health Committee. Welcome to all of you, and thanks very much indeed for coming in to join us today. Aoife Hamilton, first of all, just set out your stall for us, first of all. Give people watching a sense of what the issues are here and how you think they might be tackled.
Well, over the last 2 years, what we've seen is an already challenging situation for parents and for childcare providers get even worse. It's not too far to say we're at a crisis point. And the reality is, whether you have children or not, this affects all of us. So more than 40% of our workforce here are parents with dependent children. They're finding childcare unaffordable. And if they can't get to work, this is a major issue for our economy, but also for all of the sectors that we know will be priorities for the new executive: health, education, infrastructure. So we need to see a long-term strategy that invests in this critical sector. But at the same time, we're at an immediate crisis point. Just this week, we saw a day nursery in Lisburn announce its closure later this month. That will be 60 families without the childcare that they need in order to work. So we also need to see immediate support to get this sector through the coming weeks and months as we get an ambitious childcare strategy put in place.
Liz Kimmins, you're one of the sponsors of a Sinn Féin motion that's coming before the Assembly tomorrow on this very subject. What does your party want to happen now to tackle the issue as outlined for us there by Aoife?
Well, Mark, affordable childcare and accessible childcare is a key priority for my party, and I think it would be fair to say that all parties have outlined their position on that. As Aoife alluded to there, it's the backbone of our economy, ensuring that people have access to childcare to enable them to get to work, but also in recognising the childcare workforce and valuing the huge contribution they make. So from our perspective, we want to see this as an immediate priority. We want the Minister for Education to develop the childcare strategy that we've been talking about for so long, that will make childcare accessible and affordable. And
will the Sinn Féin Finance Minister support the Education Minister to deliver that? Because there is a cost for the block grant in this, and nobody's denying that. And it's a time, as the Deputy First Minister has told us, when there is more pressure on funding than ever before.
Well, I think it's well known at this stage that we are operating on a very, very difficult budget. So we have to look at everything here. Just last week, the all parties supported a motion to calling on the British government, who have recognised that we are chronically underfunded here, and they know that we haven't been getting enough. So that message was delivered loud and clear, and I think it's something that we are united on. I know the Finance Minister has written to the British Treasury seeking further support because we need it, and we need it now.
Where's Alliance on this? We've heard a lot about unanimity of purpose here. It does sound like it is one of the few issues, perhaps, that most of the parties appear to be able to sign up to. But presumably there are slight differences of emphasis. Where are you compared to where, for example, Sinn Féin is on this?
We've published our proposals for how we would reform childcare. We recognise that childcare is not babysitting. It is key social and economic infrastructure. It is early intervention. It's early education. It's an anti-poverty tool. It's a means of raising economic activity levels, productivity, gender equality. So it is crucial that we invest in it accordingly. And what we see is that we need to look at it in twofold. So yes, the point of having a plan, a strategy is really important. It's important that within that strategy, we're aiming for something that is going to work. If you look at what's happening in England, the free hours model, whilst palatable to voters, doesn't work. There's no point in having access to free hours if all the daycares around you are closing down or you can't use them.
So you don't want that? Because a lot of people hold that up and say, look, this is what's happening in England. We're losing out in Northern Ireland. We need something the same as operates across the water, and that will sort the problem out. And you're saying, actually, the principle is good, but the delivery is wrong.
I can understand why, especially because there is super disparity in support and what people get here and in the other regions. We get nothing, pretty much nothing in Northern Ireland, and parents are struggling. One of my constituents contacted me yesterday to say that her costs are 3 times their mortgage costs. It's unsustainable and people are desperate. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is we're all on the same page that we have to prioritise childcare. And so that has risen expectations, but we can't put in place a system which isn't going to work. We need to look at a bespoke system for Northern Ireland.
OK, Aoife Hamilton, do you agree that the model that's currently operating in England is not one that we should be trying to adopt in Northern Ireland?
That's very much the evidence that's coming through from the sector in England and from the experience of parents increasingly who are unable to access that support, actually, because it's putting so much pressure on the childcare sector that it's resulting in some just not being able to offer that support.
Yeah, so it's good in theory, but actually the delivery doesn't work because there's a shortfall. Is that? I mean, I don't want to get bogged down in the detail because it is enormously complicated, and you don't need me to tell you that. You're the expert. But what is it about it that is wrong, and how could we get it right whenever we implement a strategy here, if we do implement a strategy here?
And we have to implement a strategy here with significant investment, and it's got to learn from this. So the issue, in part, has been underfunding of this scheme, but also the way in which the scheme has been targeted. So I think in one sense, we have an opportunity from the last 2 years when we didn't have an executive in place. We had the opportunity to take a lot of learning on board from what's been done in England, elsewhere in the UK and in Ireland to develop something bespoke that is going to meet the needs of families in Northern Ireland, childcare providers and the workforce, but also our economy. And we need to see that learning taken on board and this the promises that we've heard taken forward to actually see policy translated into action.
Yeah, I want to put to you, Kate Nicholl and Liz Kimmins. The minister, the education minister, gave us a statement which said, "I trust other executive ministers will meet their rhetorical commitments to childcare with the necessary funding to deliver on our shared agenda." So I take it that he's saying he agrees with the principle, but he needs the money to be made available by the finance minister to allow him to deliver that. Now, there will be lots of ministers making exactly the same point day after day, week after week around the executive table, and they're all of great merit. Mm-hmm.
Of course, there are so many issues that are important, but every single party leader spoke on the importance of investing in childcare because it is, as I said, social and economic infrastructure. And when you look at how, yes, the Department for Education have to deliver the early years education and childcare strategy, but health is responsible for regulation. Economy is responsible for economic strategies, communities, anti-poverty and gender equality strategies, finance, the finance. So this really, it does need to be a cross-cutting executive priority and it needs to be funded properly.
OK, is the point, Liz Kimmins, that you would make that this is such a cross-cutting issue that the parties have to agree, and that while there may be very legitimate demands made in other policy areas and sectors, this trumps them all?
Well, I mean, I think we have to understand that if we don't deal with this now, we're going to face much more bigger issues down the line. I mean, when you look at COVID, for example, and the amount of barriers having no access to childcare created for people who, Aoife had mentioned earlier, work in our health service and along those frontline services that we need on a day and daily basis, because it is predominantly women that are impacted and some men. I mean, as a working mother myself, and Kate and others will agree, I mean, we are acutely aware of the issue, so it will be a cross-cutting issue, but the message is loud and clear. The British government also need to step up to the plate here and provide the funding that we desperately need, because to date, we haven't been getting it and we're actually losing out because of that. OK, let me bring the Deputy First Minister, Emma Little-Pengelly, in at this point, because you've mentioned it, Michelle O'Neill mentioned it, other ministers in the executive mentioned it. We've had a large degree of unanimity, the like of which Sunday Politics rarely sees from politicians and others around this table today. But there's still a big mountain
to be climbed, and that is the funding issue.
Like, absolutely. Like, this is an issue that I've been really passionate about for many, many years, and I've worked very closely with Aoife and others on this. And I'm just really glad that we've got to the point where there's this buy-in from across all of the parties. But the solution is not going to be simple, and I think certainly we've heard some of that. It's not just about affordability, it's about accessibility, it's making it work for the type of community that we have, the rural aspects. So there's lots of different elements of this. One of the very few advantages to coming in behind many other places in relation to a childcare strategy is that we can learn from the difficulties perhaps that they have faced. The DUP had set out a 30 hours free childcare promise, but that doesn't mean it's a cut and paste from the English system. It is very much about saying to parents, this is the offer that we want to do. We want you to be able to get 30 hours of free childcare, but of course what that looks like has to be bespoke. So look, we have a lot of work to do, but in terms of what Aoife said, this isn't just about the big strategy, and we need a big strategy. There are urgent actions that we need to take now because families and settings, childcare settings, are under a huge amount of pressure.
Okay.
It is in crisis. We need to move quickly while we continue the work on a really good, well-designed childcare strategy that is actually going to work for parents, for children, and for those who are providing those services. And I really welcome the fact that there's a really strong commitment right across all of the party leaders and the parties in the Assembly.
OK, let me just finally turn to you, Aoife Hamilton. You would hope that what you've heard today ultimately is more than just rhetoric. We're very familiar in Northern Ireland with hearing rhetoric from politicians and then people get disappointed. Do you think it's going to be different this time?
It has to be. You know, with the closure of that nursery I mentioned this week, this is a reality. It's not just a risk anymore, it's a reality for families, for our childcare settings, and therefore for our economy. Looking to April, we're going to see an increase in the living and minimum wages, which will increase further costs for settings. So the difficult situation now is getting worse, and we have to see, you know, what the promises have been translated into reality. OK,
we need to leave it there. Thank you all very much indeed for coming in to join us. Suzanne, just want a quick word on this. And it is simply to say the person who actually brought up rhetoric, it's not me being sceptical here at all. Those are the words of the Education Minister, Paul Givan, talking about rhetorical commitments from executive ministers. And what he wants to see is a commitment from the Department of Finance to actually deliver the cash.
And I think that is a statement of intent that the DUP is very serious about this issue, as obviously is Sinn Féin's. I mean, the party has chosen this subject as its first Assembly motion. So I think the two big parties, who are the most obviously important players at the executive table, I think they are united on this. Northern Ireland is the only part of the UK that doesn't have a childcare strategy. The Republic has one as well. I think that's pretty shameful, and it's up to all the parties now to change that.
It could prove to be a bit of a litmus test for the executive, and in particular for the First and Deputy First Ministers working together. Those are very clear commitments from Emma Little-Pengelly today.
Yes, and let's hope that those commitments are actually kept. I mean, there is a disconnect sometimes between Stormont and ordinary people across Northern Ireland. This is one issue that Stormont can make a difference and can change people's lives. So many families are being crucified by childcare costs. So many grandparents are having additional pressures. Much as they love their grandchildren, they don't necessarily want to have to look after them full time. They're having to do that. And we can talk all we want about women smashing through the glass ceiling. Unless there's a change in childcare policy, it's only hot air.
OK, but it is remarkable to hear politicians agreed on such a key issue. It's something we're not particularly familiar with, but many people will welcome it. Thanks very much indeed, Suzanne. That's all we've got time for today. If you missed any of this programme, you can catch up, of course, on the BBC iPlayer. I'll be back with The View on Thursday night at the usual time of 10:40 on BBC One. Until then, from all of us, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.